Hello and welcome to M6 to New South Wales. This is a brand new multi-sport formatted podcast between me and my good friends Stephen and Josh. As I say, it's going to be a multi-sport podcast. However, to start us off, we are going to go into the big summer of the Ashes, obviously with the fourth test, about to start in a mere couple of days. Just getting the thoughts of the Ashes so far. Josh, what are you thinking about the Ashes so far?
Boys, firstly, awesome to do this. I'm really excited to have a chat with you guys about it because we're 2-1 up. And as Brendan McCullum said, it feels like we won the last test. So I feel like we're 3-0 up.
I love that.
Yeah, look, I think the series has been really good. All jokes aside, I think a lot of parallels to the '05 series, which I think we can all agree, despite the results, probably one of the best series of all time. So I think this series is shaping up to be the same way. But yeah, look, I think it's been a great series so far. Steve, what do you reckon?
I'm absolutely on the same wavelength, to be honest. I think '05 was a real big turning point for me in enjoying cricket in the way I do. But I think this could take the mantle of the best one that I've seen live. I just think it's so topsy turvy. You're 2-1 up, but either team could be up. Either team could be 3-0 up. Either team could be 3-0 down. It's been a great series so far, but it's coming down to the business end, and he Aussies are falling short. So we'll carry on as it is.
Yeah, I think obviously you guys both talking about sort of like going back to '05 when it was obviously a massive series where England won. I'm very new to cricket compared to you guys. I only first started liking cricket in 2019 due to circumstances in work where it was just on and we were kind of watching it in the background. It kind of got me hooked from then. But basically, I'd been sold that we are boss at cricket. we are really good. And then basically, what happened was obviously we won the Cricket World Cup, which was amazing, fantastic. What an introductory to the sport. Then we had the Ashes. Go on, sorry.
It was
Jeff.
It was a tied World Cup. Sorry, Izaak.
Well, it
But
was
continue.
we've got the trophy, so I'll take that as a win, as everyone should. But basically, yeah, we went from that to the Ashes, and we were quite good in the 2019 Ashes. It was a tie. It was 2-2. Am I right in saying in the end with one draw?
Yeah.
Obviously, there was that mad Headingley test as well, which is only going to bring you into the game a little bit more unless you're unless you're an Australian. That's probably going to haunt you for many a year to come. But
Rest of life.
obviously, we went from that series to basically being terrible, like utter dross for like 2 or 3 more years after the.
I was
When did
about to say,
so
take COVID out of it, and our test team. What was it? What, one win in 17 before Stokes
something like
took
that?
over about 18 months ago. That's and then on the opposite end of the scale, you've got Australia who have turned around and who weren't overly at the top of the game in test, but then they've come around and they've just quite easily in the last year or so been the best test team out there.
Yeah, you are right. Like Australia have kind of like as Australia does, they've kind of smashed it for the past couple of years, but I feel like they've still not kind of hit like the apex of what they can do really. Like I feel like there's always like especially in this series, it feels like something's just not fully clicked for them yet, if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, so getting into this series, I feel like that's still lingering on that you've still not sort of like hit maybe like in this series it feels like it's kind of won and lost on moments as all sport is, but it feels like at the crucial moments we're both kind of fumbling
I was
everything.
just
Do you know
about
what I mean?
I was just about to say, me and you were talking about this, Josh, the other day, weren't we? And we were saying that not neither team has played the kind of test cricket that should be winning games. Like it's the other team that are kind of letting them back into the game, or that's my feel anyway. You've got a definite Aussie look and saying that your bowlers have got you the first two tests, haven't you, Josh?
Yeah, well, I think if you have a look at the first test, I think I've heard from a lot of guys that England probably should have won the first test, and I think a really solid argument could be made for that. But and it might sound harsh and might sound rich coming from an Australian, but I think you didn't, because Australia's got a slightly better. Well, at the time, in that first test, had a slightly better team. In the sense that our bowling attack was slightly better. I think we've got a better wicket keeper, and the batting lines up pretty similar in English conditions, I think. If you look at the second testing, I know I've had this conversation with you guys. I thought England were terrible at Lords. They won the toss, sent Australia into bat, and Australia put on 400 odd. I think it was 416 was the first innings score. Day two, they had batting conditions and had by far the best of the conditions. One for 180 odd, and then all of a sudden we're all out for 320, and then if it wasn't for Ben Stokes 155, I do think that that game wouldn't have even been close. So I think it was one guy putting the entire team on his back, and I think every Australian had a bit of PTSD about Headingley 2019 and thought he might do it again. But unfortunately for you guys, it wasn't the case. And then the third test, you made some really good changes. You look at the guys that came in, like Mark Wood, made a massive difference to your bowling attack. And I think that's been the difference between the sides. Is Australia's bowling attack's been slightly better until you've brought in guys like Mark Wood. I think the exception, though, I will say this: the exception, though, has been Stuart Broad. I think Stuart Broad's been the best bowler in this series. He's been phenomenal, particularly as we know how good he is to left-handers, and David Warner in particular. But I think
the first mention of his name, only 5 minutes in or whatever, and David Warner's name has been popped up already. Love it.
And actually, some praise from an Australian for Stuart Broad as well. That's got to be like gold dust.
It doesn't feel good to say it, but
Do you know what though? I was talking to some people in work the other day, and obviously I don't know how close you are to golf at all, but like we always say about in golf that Ian Poulter is Mr. Ryder Cup for Europe, and you just get that sense about Stuart Broad as well. You get that sense that he is Mr. Ashes. He's going to turn up. He's going to steam in, even if he isn't playing well. Which, going back to the first couple of tests, I actually think that has made us lose the test. Isn't the fact that you've played overly well. I think the first two tests we've had Jimmy Anderson, who hasn't been up to Jimmy Anderson's standards. So that has kind of let us down in the bowling department. But then also the batsmen have made decisions, especially at Lords. Like I can't understand if you've got 7 blokes on the fence that is obviously showing that you're going to bowl short stuff. Why would you not? Any person that's played cricket knows that a fast bowler running in can't do more than 15-20 minutes of bowling constant short stuff. It's too heavy on the body. It's too heavy on your arms. It's so when we've got into the positions where we could have possibly have won those first two tests, our decision making has let us down massively. Instead of going common sense for half an hour, it's carry on with. I know you absolutely love this, Josh, but it's carried on with that Bazball mentality when Stokes and at times has shown just rein in that little bit for a little bit of time and then get back on top, because once we've got on top of your bowlers, they don't seem as effective as when we're playing into your hands.
Yep, and I couldn't agree more. I think the way that Ben Stokes has the ability to go up and down through the gears, it's been spoken about so much in this series. Like the way that he can go from soaking up 50 balls, barely scoring a run, to putting every ball over the mid wicket boundary. Is phenomenal. The way he can just flip that switch. And look, I understand not every batsman can do that, right? But I think you're right in saying it doesn't need to all be hammer and smash. And Bazball, we've spoken about it at length, and I know a lot of comments have been made around Bazball. But I think what it shouldn't be is if you're playing a positive and aggressive brand of cricket, that's one thing to call Bazball, but it doesn't excuse being it doesn't excuse you from having responsibility to put a price on your wicket.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's a lot of what Bazball is. I think it's almost a psychology tactic for the players to shirk all responsibility. I mean, you've got Stuart Broad saying the series in Australia that they lost 4-0 doesn't count. You got Brendan McCullum saying it feels like we won the last test when you didn't. And it's there's no accountability. There's no one standing up saying, you know what, we need to be better. And that's what it looks like from an Australian point of view. Because if I lost as an Australian, if we lost the first two tests, you know, the Australian public would be spit and chip saying changes need to be made. You're not playing good enough. It's not up to Australian cricket standard.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I just don't see that from the England camp. Like, particularly after the second test. But I mean, that's a whole nother story.
Do you not think
But
it's
yeah.
possibly a little bit of bravado and a little bit of let's because realistically those conversations absolutely probably would have been had. It's just and I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying with the fact of it looks like there's no one taking responsibility, but I
Mhm.
also think the way that Brendan and Stokesy has allowed them to play is making a better team as we were. Like I say, one win in 17, and we've changed that round to what is it? 12 out of 7,
Yeah.
16, something like that now.
Yeah.
Um, so it's give and take. It's learning, and I suppose when you're on a run of winning tests like we have done, because yes, you are the number one test team in the rank. Oh, actually, I don't think you are. But realistically, you won the Test World Championship. You're
Mhm.
number one. But over the last year to 18 months under Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum, we've probably won more games than you. Um, and it's about right. Okay, we've lost a couple now. How are we going to change it? And I suppose the third test, because the first test, losing by 2 wickets, you it's literal like moments in the game. I don't think the first test we played too bad. I just think we were up to standard. The second test, I can't disagree with you. The fact that we were still in it on day five, yeah, it was day five. The fact that we
Mhm.
could have won it is unbelievable. But then I think the fact that we went 2-0 down has probably made Brendan and Stokesy go, right, just wait a minute. There's been decisions throughout the whole test, which we'll get into later, but it's I get what you're saying, what it looks like from an Australian point of view, that no one is standing up, and you're probably all loving the fact that we're thinking we're close and we're not. But I actually think that same mindset of going, no, we're still doing okay. We're still trying to stick to a free flowing. It's just this is the first time we've really come under pressure in this last in their tenure, basically.
Yeah, I think
Mm.
with the baseball mentality, if that's what if we call it, you know, them calling it a mentality, I think it is very much live by the sword, die by the sword. And obviously, we've been living by the sword for 12 months now, and we've been getting a lot of success from it. So it's kind of like, okay, there's a few bumps in the road here, but given sort of like the test sample that we've been given over the past 12 months, because we've not played like, you know, we've not played like small teams. Obviously, we played New Zealand, beat them 3-0, Pakistan beat them 3-0, who, you know, really good test match teams.
Yeah.
Sort of like over the years, and obviously even still, you know, there are good teams today. This is the first time we've played, I would say, India as well. Actually, India, because we hammered India in like 70 overs, didn't we? We did like a phenomenal run chase in just over a one
Yeah.
day. This is the first time we've really come up against a team which is kind of like making us sort of like dig in a little bit and have to kind of force it, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of felt free flowing in the last couple of test series that we've had, but the Aussies are really giving it to us, you know, back as well. It kind of feels like this is the first bump in the road, but I can see why they're sticking with it, because obviously, you know, we have kind of humbled a lot of countries with it over the past few months. It's been kind of crazy to watch. But I think this is the first roadblock with it, and I think sticking with it's the right thing to do. Like, you are absolutely right in what you're saying. Of like, it's a bit reckless at times, but I think that recklessness is kind of what makes it work, if that makes sense. Because it's kind of predictability, if that makes sense. Like, you know, we're going to do it, but it doesn't make sense, so it's kind of working.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And if you look at the English Test side when they changed things after that Australian series where you lost 4-0, you're trying to play that traditional brand of Test cricket under Joe Root, who is a relatively conservative captain. I don't think he's a terrible captain. But I think he's quite conservative by nature, and in terms of his captaincy, and look, that's fine if you've got the cricketers that can play under that style of cricket. And unfortunately for England at the moment, I don't think you've got, particularly in your batting stocks, I don't think you've got enough sort of traditionalist Test match batsmen. But you're by far and away the strongest cricketing nation in terms of your white ball depth.
Yeah.
You've got white ball batters coming out your ears. So playing that sort of aggressive, flamboyant style of cricket in red ball cricket, it just makes sense for you guys to do. And look, Australia's got a couple of aggressive players too. You think of guys like David Warner, Travis Head, Mitch Marsh. Like Mitch Marsh scored that unreal 100.
Unreal the way he hits the ball.
Yeah, that 100 at Headingley, like that was just that was one of the best hundreds I've ever seen. Run a ball 100 when no one else was scoring runs, in really difficult conditions. And he didn't even look uncomfortable. Aside from getting dropped, I think he got dropped on about 12. Aside from getting that chance that went down, he just looked so comfortable at the crease. And again, like Australia has some aggressive batsmen, but we've also got guys that they want to build their innings and they want to work their way into their innings. So you think of guys like Steve Smith, Usman Khawaja, they're guys that really want to build an innings. So it doesn't make sense for Australia to just go out there and slap the ball around, because we've got guys that will build their innings based around their technique. So yeah, look, baseball absolutely makes sense to sort of be playing that way, but I think what if I was English, what I'd be saying is it'd be really, really, really important to still maintain that accountability for your performances. So guys like Johnny Bairstow, some of his performances have been unacceptable for like Test cricket standards, and again some of the dismissals for the batsmen have just been so weak. Which, look, I'm not even just talking about the Johnny Bairstow incident. There's been wickets where they just throw their wickets away. So yeah, I think if England can tidy that up, Australia's in a lot of trouble in English conditions, because your bowling attack's good enough to take 20 wickets. So if your batting lineup can get it right, Australia's in big trouble.
Yeah. I think that's probably one thing that you just said, is that our bowling attack is good enough to take 20 wickets because we've took 20 wickets in each test. That's something that probably people that have been watching it maybe for the first time have been looking at these performances and going, "Oh, we've not been playing well. We've you're right, we've not been playing well, but we've still we've still come very, very close for a team in the first two tests that weren't firing on all cylinders, and then in that third test, we've obviously um, made sufficient changes, which we'll probably go on to in a minute. But and just to put that Mitch Marsh 100 into perspective, he hasn't played Test cricket for, is it 4 years?
Yeah, 2019 was the last time.
Yeah, the Oval 2019 was his last Test match, I think.
Do you not think though, Josh, that, and this probably goes back to the way baseball is being played, is he's come in with not really any expectations. He's not put himself under pressure. He has just gone out and hit the ball the way he hits, probably in one day cricket as well.
Yeah.
So it's in theory that as ball technique has actually worked in your favour as well with Mitch Marsh, because like you say, no one was feeling comfortable. And he went from 0 to 100 like that. It was so good. There was times when we didn't react to the way he was playing. But then it then it obviously shows what other test teams have been feeling against us in the last 12 to 18 months, when we just turn it on and go kind of with playing that bad ball, but absolutely putting it under pressure every single over. So we kind of had it brought back onto us, which was, I suppose, good to watch. Just
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
but That
and
surely
that's
has played a mentality in his head as well.
yeah. I think he's always played like that. I think he's far more comfortable playing his shots. I think Travis Head is the same. You look at Travis Head's career strike rate, and it's right up there in terms of like strike rates in Test cricket. So and David Warner's much the same. So I think those guys just prefer playing that way. I don't think they sort of come into it and go, "I'm going to give Baz ball back to the English here." I think it's just the way
Yeah.
they've always played.
Keeping it natural for them,
But
isn't it?
yeah, definitely. And I think they're the kind of guys that feel like, if they're soaking up 20, 30 balls and only scoring a couple of runs, they feel like they're getting bogged down and they've got to play, a really extravagant shot, and that's how they can get themselves out. So I think bowling attacks will often try and tie them up and stop them from scoring, as opposed to trying to, nick them off or get them out every ball. And I think that's why we've seen that short ball tactic a lot, because it's about drying up the runs to coax the batsman into doing something rash. And so you've seen the short ball tactic to Travis Head. You've seen Australia do it to the English a lot. And I think it's more about, stopping the scoring as much as possible. So they play a loose stroke. But that's the way I see it.
What has been, because obviously before the third test, yes, you'd won both tests, but
Mhm.
what was the perception down there of the way that Cummins had set fields and stuff like that? Because watching it live, it felt very quickly go into a bit of a defensive
Yep.
field
Oh,
almost straight away.
I'll be honest. I thought it was. I thought, fuck me. I just got to say it that after that first ball that got put away for 4 of the series, the
Yeah.
English were carrying on like they won the fucking series. I swear to God. But anyway, look, it's I look. I didn't mind his fields. The only thing I thought though, I think he in that first test he had field. I think he had a deep point first over. Um, and I think I probably would have. I don't mind that fielder being on the fence, but I probably would have had him on the other side. To be honest, I probably would have had him at deep square. If you're going to set a defensive field to those to the English batsmen that are going to go after it, you typically like you're going to try and get them out traditionally, bold LBW, nicking off. None of those areas are going through point. If you're bowling short, you're bowling at the body. It's probably not going to go through point unless they're really backing away. Which, and they're probably just like I think if you're bowling straighter, bring the stumps into play. Even when you're trying to bowl that 4th and 5th stump line, I just don't see balls going through point all that
Do you
often.
think it
So
was?
I
Do you
thought
think
that
it
was weird.
Do you think it was more right? Don't let them get off, and then we
100%.
can try and get
Yeah,
them out. Or
yeah,
because that's what it felt like. It felt like he was scared of the batsman
Mhm.
getting a start, and but realistically, the way it showed in certain parts of all 3 tests that we haven't batted too well, and he's
yeah,
probably like the first. I'd say possibly the first test more than the second because I think both
Mhm.
teams did it in the second. But the first test, it just felt like he was kind of waiting for something to happen
yeah,
and not being proactive. Which I'll be honest, you talked about Joe Root's captaincy earlier on, being quite conservative, and I feel like it wasn't at the start, and it grew into that because of
yep,
the way the players we had, the results we were having. But the way
yep.
Ben Stokes is captained is, no, we're going to try and get you out most of the time,
Mhm.
and that wasn't what. And I suppose yeah, you're right, 2 different teams, but that was the main. What I've got from those 3 tests is that we were trying to get people out where you were probably using your head a little bit because it didn't take much, but trying to be patient, and it
Mm.
just seemed like Cummins was trying to be a bit too patient straight away. Um,
Yep. Yeah, and
but
and look, yeah, not an unfair assessment. I think if you look at that first innings that England played at Edgbaston. Look, they played really well. In obviously hindsight's a great thing, right? I thought the declaration was too early live. I thought it was bizarre. Like obviously they wanted to have like a few overs at the Aussies at the end of day one. I get it, right? But also, had England won that game, it would have been lauded as genius.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's mad respect to Ben Stokes for declaring when he did, because it's a gutsy move. It's putting the game on the line, but it's really chasing harder to win, which I think that's been the difference between England and Australia for a long time. Australia's played that way, really aggressive and really aggressive declarations to try and get a result. Whereas England traditionally hasn't done that. They often play out for draws. So to see that from the other side of the
Yeah.
pond is actually quite nerve wracking to see England actually having a crack. It's good to see, and it's good for cricket as far as I'm concerned.
I was just about to say, I think that declaration for me was, at the time, you were like, okay. Me personally, I don't know about how Isaac
It
saw it,
felt
but
it felt
as
very Bazball.
see, I didn't see it like that. I understood it, and even though we lost the test, my thing is we got close to winning that test, and we lost a day to rain that first test. Was it the Wednesday, I think, or the
Mhm.
middle day?
Yep.
So realistically, in hindsight, would he do it again? I'd probably say yeah, because if without that declaration, would we have been as close to forcing a result? And I
And
don't think we would have.
Ollie
What do you
Tintin Robinson said that we had three tail enders in that game, and realistically, that was the difference. Was our three tail enders putting on 44 and 16 respectively.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So if you look at England's second innings as well, I think Pat Cummins got it right. The standout bowlers in that Edgbaston test in the second innings there was Pat Cummins and Nathan Lyon. Both took. So I've just got the stats up in front of me here. So Pat Cummins took 4 for 63, going at 3.43 and over. Nathan Lyon took 4 for 80, going at 3.33 and over. So look, they dried up the runs. They were taking wickets consistently. There was no real big scores there. There was a few starts. So like Joe Root, Harry Brook, and Ben Stokes all got starts in that innings, but everyone else really missed out. So, and then I mean, in that last innings for Australia, Khawaja played brilliantly off the back of his 100 and got a really valuable 65 runs. And then again, batsman missing out, a couple of starts there. David Warner got a start, and then it was Pat Cummins and Nathan Lyon that clutched up and brought it home. So I think like that first test, I feel like Australia was on top for most of that test match, right up until that Khawaja wicket when Khawaja was bowled by Stokes. What a fucking series Stokes is having, by the way.
Yeah.
Runs, big wickets, like
You know what
he's
though?
been
If you
incredible.
actually look, he's having such a good. If you actually look if you've got your stats up there, look at his scores in runs, except for the last test. His first two,
Well, his first
the
first
first
test, first
test,
innings, he went out for one.
yeah, and then second innings it wasn't too much more,
43.
if I remember rightly. So
Yep.
43. So it's a start, fair enough. Second innings, what did we get? Second test, sorry.
Let me just pull it up, man.
Second test, he got 155 in the second.
Yeah.
That was in the second, but the first one was in its 16 or something like that.
Something like that.
So he got 17 in first innings, and then in the second
17.
innings he got 155.
So until that second innings, his runs weren't great in the second test, and that's one thing I was a bit like, oh right, okay, he's not scoring too many runs, and you can say 43 is a decent, fair enough, but for someone that is obviously struggling to bowl, it's all about your runs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's giving that
Yeah.
impression that, but even with, I thought he was having a really good first test, good second test, and now he's contributing with the bat, which Hey, bring it on when we need it. That's all I say.
Yeah. So if you
I'm
have a look at the run scorers in this series, Usman Khawaja is the leading run scorer at the moment.
What a
356 runs at 59. And Ben Stokes is second at 309 at an average of 51. And then Travis Head at 3 with 266 runs at 44. In terms of the wicket takers, no surprises. Stuart Broad, 16 wickets at an average of 24. Pat Cummins with 15 wickets, an average of 27. So those two guys, they're leading the bowling attacks really well. And the other guy, Mitchell Starc, he's only played the 2 tests, but already taken 13 wickets at 23. So he's also playing really well, which is good. Missed out on the first test, but I think he's made a big difference to the Australian bowling attack. And I think
he was left out of the first one. I was really surprised.
I was going to say,
yeah.
What's Australia's dig with Mitchell Starc? Like, I feel like he's every time I'm like watching some media that's been put out on like YouTube and clips like that, I feel like there's always talk of him getting dropped, but I'm like, what? Every time I hear it.
I think it's because he tends to be pretty expensive. He takes wickets, but he goes for runs. And I think it's like any guy that bowls genuinely fast. Like, I think a lot of people forget how quick Mitchell Starc is. You know, he's consistently bowling 145 kilometers an hour, which what's that in the old money? 90, 95 mile an hour. So he's bowling wheels. So look, he tends to bowl 1 or 2 loose balls and over. So he goes for runs as well. So I think for Starkey, it's as long as he's taken wickets, we'll have him in the team. But I think with the whole Bazball thing, I think Australia might have been a little bit nervous about playing him, particularly in the first test at Edgbaston. I think they might have been a little bit nervous about it, but you know, Hazelwood and Boland, they've been okay, but particularly Boland, I feel like the English have really gone after him and put a bit of pressure on him, and I think Hazelwood's probably been slightly the better of the two. So I think, look, if Australia's picking their best bowling lineup, it's got to be Cummins, Starc, and Hazelwood, in my opinion. Particularly now that Nathan Lyon's out, that's such a huge loss for Australia.
Yeah, we've not even touched on that, have we?
About to bring this up. Yeah, we've not touched on that. And
yeah,
and we're all very we even as English we love Nathan Lyon.
We love Gary.
Yeah, we love Gary. I'm sure over the last 12 to 18 months while you've been back in Oz, the amount of voice clips you've got of nice Gary is unbelievable.
Mainly from me as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say, mainly for the one that actually is new to cricket. But seriously, how much of an effect do you think this is going to be?
I think it's going to be massive. I think it could change a series. It depends on the type of wickets, though. I think if you've got green monsters in Manchester and at the Oval, then I don't know if Murphy gets another go. And it's not a knock on him. He's a good young cricketer and he's got a big future ahead of him. But I think if you've got a green wicket, I think you're taking an extra seamer. And Travis Head, Steve Smith, Marnus Labuschagne, they're all good enough part-timers to fill that void, I think. And I think if you look at a guy like Michael Neser, who is scoring runs for fun in county cricket at the moment and taking some serious polls too. I think a guy like that.
He's not out the other day, wasn't he? For can't remember who he's playing for. 176 not out yet.
Yeah, let me hit you with some stats. So Michael Neser for Glamorgan this season, has played 6 matches, scored 487 runs, 250s, 200s, high score of 176 red at an average of 81.16. Fourth on the highest average in county this year. And also in terms of his wickets, he's taking a ton of wickets as well. So let me just grab his stats here. So 6 matches, he's taken 20 wickets with best figures of 7 for 32 at an average of 24. So he's a guy that's averaging 80 with the bat this year in county cricket, 24 with the ball. I just don't understand how he's not in the team.
I was just about to say that is utter craziness why he isn't even, because realistically he's not even being talked about.
Yeah, and it's not as though he's not like a Cameron Green, Mitchell Marsh batting all rounder. He's a genuine strike bowler. I think in terms of his bowling ability, he bowls around that 130 kilometre an hour mark. So he's more sort of Jimmy Anderson pace. But he swings it both ways, moves it off the seam, perfect for English conditions. But I think because he's not bowling 140 kilometres an hour, I feel like Australian selectors as well have a tendency to write guys like that off because they're not expressed. But in English conditions, I think he suits it to a T, and he's showing that for Glamorgan.
He's probably worth getting on his batting alone by those stats.
Absolutely.
Where's he bat as well? Is he a where's he bat?
He's a 6 or 7, isn't he?
Yeah, normally he'd bat at in the test side anyway. He'd probably bat at 7 or 8. But for Glamorgan, do you know what? I don't know where he bats for them. But I imagine it's somewhere in the middle order.
I was just about to say I'd be saying top 5 easy.
Yeah.
But from an English point of view, he can absolutely stay playing for that Welsh side.
He's fine to play for them. They're all right. They need him. They need him a lot.
Yeah, they can they need that push for the second half of the season, don't they?
100%.
So Nathan Lyon is going to be that big miss then, yeah.
Yeah, big miss. I think the way that he can bowl in fourth innings, particularly with England, they almost seem to prefer to chase these days. I think with England chasing, he's a huge loss. Bowling at the death there in those fourth innings, he's just so valuable to us. So he's a big loss, and obviously his experience as well. But look, we move forward. We'll be just fine.
Izaak was really looking
4-1, and you can take it to the bank. All right?
No, obviously we're going Old Trafford days 1 and 4, and you were looking forward to it massively, weren't you?
I'm debating on selling a ticket now that Gary Lyon's not there.
I'm really looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I've never been to an English Test match before, and the fact that my first one is going to be quite a crucial Ashes Test match
good,
as well. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. I do think that Lyon, from an English point of view, I know for certain when I saw him cramping off, my heart felt for him, but my English head was going, "Go on, son, get off."
By the way,
it almost had that 05 Glenn McGrath feel about it, didn't it? It was just. Yeah, it was just one of those moments when I just thought straight away, how big is this going to be on the series?
Yeah, I'm going to explain. So, do you know much, Izaak, about the 05 Glenn McGrath incident?
Mate, I don't know anything about 05 other than the fact that we won and Freddie Flintoff got absolutely pissed.
So the whole series literally turned on its head. And for was it the Edgbaston Test? Was it Edgbaston or was it Headingley that he slipped? Oh, whichever one it was. He was warming up on the field, and I was listening to a interview with the English lads that played at that time a few days ago, and they said that they were warming up, and all of a sudden they just turned around because there was this big hoorah, and all they saw was Glenn McGrath on the floor holding his ankle, and what he'd done was he stood on a ball. And if you don't know much about 05 and before, Izaak, Glenn McGrath is quite possibly one of the best bowlers ever to come out of Australia.
Christ.
He wasn't the quickest, but his line and length was something I've never seen before. And they always talk about that corridor of uncertainty in cricket, and he just put it there on the same dot every single time just to make it, and he got so many nicks because that's where he put it. Then the backups for Australia on that whole series weren't to that standard, were they, Josh? They weren't to coming in and filling for Glenn McGrath, were they?
No, and it was it was Edgbaston. It was the second test, so Australia won comfortably at Lords. I
Comfortably,
Sounds
remember,
about
wasn't it
right.
like
yeah,
300 runs, 200 and something runs, something like that?
200 or something. I can't remember, but it was it was a pretty low scoring first innings. I remember Australia got bowled out for less than 200. I think England was pretty similar. Australia had a really small first innings lead. My memory of it was I think Michael Clark. I remember scoring runs. Kevin Peterson scored some runs, but we ended up winning comfortably.
Yeah.
The second test, yeah, Glenn McGrath injures himself in the warm up. England come out and make 400 odd. I think did Marcus Trescothick turn up maybe? I know he
Yeah,
scored runs, but he
yeah, I think.
he scored a ton of Australia ended up having I think it was about a 100 run deficit in the first innings. We bowled England out pretty cheaply in the third, courtesy of Shane Warne, the fucking king.
Oh yeah, just Shane Warne, probably the best
Yeah,
bowler of all time.
yeah. Yep. And Australia came back in the fourth innings for a chaser, and I can't remember. I think we fell 2 runs short. I think we needed like 280 to win. Hang on, let me look. Let me
Yeah.
look it up.
Is this the
That,
famous
was
game where
that,
basically we won
I was
by
just
like
about to
a
say, was
sub
this
fielder?
This is the Flintoff McGrath game. Flintoff Brett Lee game where Flintoff went over and shook Brett Lee's
yeah,
hand
yeah, I think this
immediately
is that.
after losing,
Yeah,
which is I think that's why every Australian loves Andrew Flintoff. So Australia lost by 2 runs. They needed 281 for victory and they scored 279.
yeah. Do you know what
Yeah, so
that had the same feel as what we did at Lords? Yes, we lost by
mm,
40, but you just felt like it was something was going to happen all the time this year,
yep, yep,
and that has resonated. But that cost you the series realistically. McGrath not playing. Um,
yeah,
who knows how it would have how it would have played out, and now we're gonna see a different
yep,
series now that Lion isn't holding up an end.
yeah.
Um,
And
I'm
what I'm really enjoying about this series is you think back to '05 and there was two draws in that series, particularly at the Oval as well, and at Old Trafford. That was Australia batting to save the series. Ricky Ponting played a magnificent innings in Manchester, batting for a draw. Whereas the Oval, it was rain affected, and England almost got saved a little bit by the rain. Australia was playing, you know, pretty well. And I know the same thing happened in 2013 as well, in the Broadwalk series. Um,
just couldn't help
England,
yourself, could you?
England won. Mate, I can't.
Speechless.
It's so against the spirit of cricket. It's not funny, but anyway, I think that series as well. Heavily affected by rain and a couple of times England, favoured from the weather. Whereas this series, it doesn't even feel like that's going to come into play, even if there is a lot of rain about, because the cricket that's being played by both sides is ultra aggressive and ultra entertaining, and I'm all for it. I think it's awesome.
Just one.
Well,
Well, just moving down on the list of priorities that we've got. Things that we wanted to talk about on there. You've mentioned the key words there, Josh, that are written down on here for you.
I know
Obviously,
what's
I've
coming.
I've got it noted down as the Bairstow incident / spirit of cricket.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm obviously new to, well, I say, oh, yeah, I'm new. It's only been 4 years, and there's not been a lot of cricket in that time because of COVID, really. Um, spirit of cricket is something which absolutely baffles me because when people say it, I don't 100% know what it means. So can I just get a little insight into sort of like what it is, what is it meant to be?
I'll give you the English version and then see if, because I'll be honest, I don't know what sort of view it is from down under, but um, so as a perceived English cricketer, and I used to play cricket at amateur level, club level, and I was always brought up in that game, and the way I watched it as well was that it's a gentleman's sport. You do things that don't bring the game into disrepute. If something happens that you should be thinking about how it is perceived outside of that game by the public, by other people. So that's the way it is for me anyway. That the spirit of cricket isn't just about playing a game; it's about how it's played. It's making sure that, and I suppose it should be like this in every sport, but it's you don't want to do something as a cricketer that kids are going to go there on a Saturday or a Sunday when they're playing and think that it's okay to do. That's the way it is perceived here. But Josh, is it the same down your end?
It is, and what I want to get into before I talk about the spirit of cricket, because I will come to that because it's a really important point, and it's something that Australians actually hold in really high regard. But I do want to talk about the incident because I have never seen such a fucking tantrum over something that is clearly within the laws of the game and clearly within the spirit of the game. And there's a couple of reasons why I say that.
Ooh,
The
right,
spirit of the
okay.
game, for me, in Australia, is all about playing the game hard and fair,
Yeah,
respecting the umpire and their decision,
yeah,
and respecting your opponents.
okay.
Now, that for me is how you break it down in really simple terms. We actually have an award in Australia that is called the Richie Benno Spirit of Cricket Award, and it has three components: respect for the opponents, respect for the role of the umpires, and respect for the game. So really similar to what I just touched on there. But if I have a look at that incident, the ball has left Kerry's hand whilst Johnny Bairstow is scratching his foot, calling over for himself, which he's not allowed to do. The umpires call over, not Johnny Bairstow. He didn't turn around to see where the ball was. If he did, he'd notice that it was travelling towards his stumps. The ball hits the stumps when he walks out of his crease. It's out. Every person said, Ben Stokes said it. Brendan McCullum said, yeah, it's out, but it's against the spirit of cricket. Well, hang on, back up a second. You just said it was out. So tell your story walking, Johnny. It's out. And off. I don't understand why it's debate. If we agree that it's out, why is it debate? Why are we not respecting the umpire's decision on out? I mean, there
So
was a similar incident. There was a similar incident the day before with Mitchell Starc taking a clean catch, but the umpire's ruling that he didn't take it clean because he put his hand on the ground. Now, I don't disagree. I don't agree with that umpire's call, but you've got to cop it, right? And if we were being consistent with this whole spirit of cricket thing, Ben Duckett knew that he was caught. He absolutely sees that catch taken and goes, that was a clean catch, but he put his hand on the ground. If it's spirit of the cricket, well, he should say, actually, I'm just going to keep walking because he took that cleanly, and, you know, a silly little rule doesn't really matter. Like, I just... and Johnny Bairstow tried to do the exact same thing to Marnus Labuschagne on day 3, but that's not spoken about in England. Brendan McCullum, who's been one of the most outspoken critics of the incident, ran out Murali when he was trying to celebrate 100 with Kumar Sangakkara in a test match. Stuart Broad, he's tweeting, probably saying that like losing test matches doesn't really mean anything, and all this other crap that comes out of his stupid fucking Twitter account. And him
right,
saying that it's the worst thing he's seen on a cricket pitch.
no.
He nicks the ball to mid-on and doesn't walk. What do you mean, mate? If you're going to criticise the spirit of cricket, you better make sure you squeaky clean yourself. And let me tell you, the guys that are accusing Australians of not playing it in the spirit of cricket aren't fucking squeaky clean. The other thing is, we were up 2-0 at the time. Not once did any of them say Australia have been the better side, they've played better cricket, which they had, which to me is against the spirit of cricket. All they're doing is throwing a fucking tantrum because it didn't go their way.
Okay,
And
so
my views on it is this: you can't pick and choose when you're going to apply the spirit of cricket. You can't do it. But
okay,
that's just me.
so we'll get the newbies look in a moment from Isaac, but from me, and you should know this as well, Josh, from playing cricket
Mhm.
for a long time. So I'm going to go to the Stark incident first. I have always been taught if you're catching the ball, it
Mhm.
shouldn't hit the ground. Simple as that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and I am all up for if it's a catch, it's a catch, and if you've got your fingers under, they should be given the
Yep.
benefit of the doubt if you've got your fingers under, because I feel like in every single cricket stadium that is international level, there's cameras that are going to look at
Yep.
every single angle. But I personally think the Stark thing absolutely shouldn't be out because me personally, if you're and slowing it down, fair enough, it kind of shows it in a different light. But in
Mhm.
normal speed,
Yep.
he catches the ball, absolutely catches that ball. But
Yep.
in the aftermath of catching that ball, he then puts that ball without fingers on the ground to stabilize himself. And to me, that's part of the catch. And you're letting the ball hit, like not hit the ground, but you're letting the ball touch the ground without showing that your movements have stopped, etc., etc. So,
Sure.
is it part of spirit of the cricket, spirit of the game, the start catch? I don't think. I think that's just common sense. If you're a cricketer of any grade, over here, over in Australia, over in India, over in Pakistan, any place, you are taught to catch the ball and not let it touch the ground in any way, shape, or form. So that's me personally. I think Stark was just being. I don't know. I think obviously it was momentum when he caught the ball and stuff like that. But realistically, he's put himself in that position to
Sure.
to for them to say, no, he's not out. The Bairstow incident is a little different. I think is it out? Absolutely. By the letter of the law, he is out. What I would what I would have done if I was Pat Cummins, and you've obviously got a bit of a leadership group. It's Pat Cummins. It's usually Carey and the bowler. Yeah, that's usually what happens when you have the way to go up for review or anything like that. And what I would have done is I'd have pulled Carey and the bowler and possibly another senior member of the team away when that video came up on the big screen and Stone made a honest, deliberate movement to
Mhm.
say, "I'm out." Fair enough. Me personally, and this is me being truthful. Me personally, he should be doing it with his bat. That's what tapping down is. That's
Yep.
what I got taught. You should do it with your bat, not your foot.
Yep.
That's the way I got taught. But then I'd have seen that video and gone, right, we have, and it should have been made. I think Pat Cummins should have maybe thought about it a little bit more than what it looked like he did. It felt like he was like, because the Stark incident was an umpire decision,
Mhm.
whereas the Bairstow run out was an Australian team's decision whether to withdraw that appeal because of the basis of what happened. And do I think they should have appealed for it? Absolutely. Do I think it should have been given out? Absolutely. But then when that big screen come up and showed that he made a
Mhm.
deliberate movement behind the line, it should have caused
Yeah.
the Australian captain to think about it. And that's my problem. Do I
Yeah.
disagree with what he's done in the basis of a game in the Ashes? Probably not. Do I think he should have absolutely have took more time to think about what had happened and what he was seeing? Absolutely, because it is
Mm.
a question of spirit of cricket. Was
Yeah.
was what was happening in front of him going to affect a test match in a negative way, or
Yeah.
or is it going to is his actions going to be perceived in a negative way? And that's why,
Sure.
like I'll be honest, if I was on a cricket field and I'd seen that and I'd seen video evidence of the guy thinking that he was okay,
Sure.
I would have withdrawn. Simple as. Like, I'd have told him. I'd have turned around and gone, "You're lucky, and if we do it again, you're absolutely out."
Yeah.
Like that, and it's possibly in the same remit of a mancad. I personally don't agree with mancads,
Mm.
but if someone's taking the mick and walking 2 or 3 yards before you've even bowled the ball, yeah, you're damn right you should be
Mm.
giving them telling off and going, keep doing it, and I'm going to take you.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it, but I also think, well, there's the rules there for a reason that it
Yeah.
can be done. So stop
Mm.
taking the mick.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and that's
for me,
yeah, that's
for me,
my perception anyway.
yeah. Look, and I've heard that from a lot of English mates, to be honest, who've said pretty much the exact same thing. And for me, like I've played a lot of grade cricket. I've captained a lot of sides in cricket. If that was me and that was my keeper, the question I would ask is exactly the question Pat Cummins asked the umpire: did you call over? And then the umpire said no, and then I would say, all right, mate, we'll fucking keep walking, Johnny. That's what I would have said, because like if it's up to the batsman, the onus is on the batsman to understand when the umpire calls owner. That's not up to the fielding side. And this is what I don't understand about the whole situation. The fielding side doesn't, they're not. It's the responsibility is not on them to call over. It's not on them to check with the umpire if it's over. It's up to the batsman.
Yeah.
Johnny Bairstow didn't even look behind him, and when he scratched his foot, and I made this point earlier, when he scratched his foot behind the crease, yes, he thought it was over. I feel sorry for him because he thought it was over. But had he turned around, the ball had left Kerry's hand. So Kerry's done nothing wrong. He's done absolutely nothing wrong, and I cannot understand why he's being vilified by the English, particularly the crowd. Like, to me, it's fucking weird. Like, it's really weird, the reaction to Kerry, because in Australian
can
cricket,
I can answer that very
there's not a nicer person in Australian cricket than Alex
no.
Carey. Like,
I
if
don't think it's anything about that. I think it's down to the he's getting vilified, and so is Cummins, not
mm,
because they did something wrong. It's
mm,
the situation that England have found themselves in. They needed to spice it up. The crowd got behind them. It got them. It got them a bit needly. You saw Stuart Broad when he came in. You saw the way Ben Stokes batted after Bairstow had gone, and
mm,
it just added that little bit that has obviously lit a fire underneath England a little bit.
yep,
And the crowd got that. So I don't think by the end of the series, I think it'll be all forgotten. Like I said to you on a text message, didn't I? If that was me, I'd have just called you a bunch of cheating cunts, and that's it, done. That'd have been over. Obviously, it's being kept run over a little bit, um, because it's lit something in England.
yep,
And this is what I mean about should Pat Cummins have thought about it, because it's done something positive to England, which he probably didn't want to happen. Now they
mm,
feel hard done by. Now they've got something a bit between their teeth, and that's why I think if Pat Cummins actually had his time again, would he have made it a little bit clearer that he was thinking about it and really taken into what had happened on board? But Isaac, you've been quiet. You're obviously new to cricket. What did you think of the whole thing? Because I think we got a text message off you going, "Well, isn't he out?"
Yeah. So So for me, I've just obviously been listening to you guys talk about it. For me, the spirit of cricket is mythical in some kind of way. It seems like there's always going to be two sides, but there's no concrete laws of spirit of cricket. If that makes sense in itself, like
Yeah.
it seems like it's more of a cultural thing rather than a game thing, if that makes sense. So I'm just reading on Cricket Australia. Cricket Australia's got basically a full page dedicated to the spirit of cricket, and it has on section 2 fair and unfair play. So it goes back to this is kind of the overall thing that I'm taking away from it. According to the laws, the umpires are sole judges of fair and unfair play. That's the first line on fair and unfair play there. So the umpires basically are the choice. So it's not about whether, for example, I've heard it said that Johnny Bairstow is not trying to take an advantage by walking into the crease or anything like that. Or it's unfair if, let's just say, for example, Carey did handle the ball for a second and then throw it in. The umpires have said that is fair within the boundaries of the game, so therefore it's fine. With sort of like the whole Johnny Bairstow incident, I think the key takeout is something which children are taught, really, of don't until you're 100% sure of what you're doing. don't give the opposition a chance to even get you out, if that makes sense. For example, as you say, he's not waited for the umpire to call over. He's just marched across because he's done his little tippy tap or whatever it's called behind the behind the crease. But if he's not been told that it's over and the ball is still live, he can't just you can't just assume that you can walk. So in my eyes, it's kind of all fair game. Like you shouldn't be giving the opposition even an inch to give you out. I think Stuart Broad, obviously, he came out and was kind of the pantomime English hero kind of way, but that's the kind of way you've got to do it. Like as soon as the ball's hit and you're not going to run, stay behind your crease, wait. Maybe don't be as theatrical, but stay behind your crease, wait, and then when it's over, then you can do it. So I don't think it's a question of sort of like the spirit of the game, as per se. I think it's a question of sort of like being too relaxed, if that makes sense. Like
it's common sense. It's like the Mitchell Stark match. It was common sense not to rub the ball along the floor. Johnny Bairstow, it's common sense not to just walk out your crease until you are absolutely certain. And I'm not debating that whatsoever. It's just one of those things that is. I personally think it's going to be one of those clips that are brought out every single Ashes just because it builds up an Ashes, and this is what this has done. This has just added that extra fire to England, and this is me being a neutral for a second, and this is why I said earlier about if Pat comes at his time again, he'd think about whether or not doing it, because he's possibly done something that is going to cause England to go on and win the Ashes.
You've kind of hit the nail on the head. It's kind of like as a competitor, as a competitor, you want to get that wicket. But that wicket has kind of started the avalanche, hasn't it? Like that's going to just keep rolling momentum-wise, and obviously, crowd can
unblocking that rock, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like crowd can sort of like carry teams at times in any sport, but obviously in cricket, it's kind of important because, like, for example, you look at the performances in. If you look at the performances in Lords, where it's all people in stupid ties and stupid coats, and all being called Henry Bartholomew III from Chichester and stuff like that, then the atmosphere was pretty dross, and we played pretty terrible for it. As soon as the game got spicy, our performance kind of went up a little bit. Ultimately, yeah, we lost, but we played so much better after that incident than before it. So I think it is going to carry, especially in sort of like Headingley, where we basically came and the crowd was electric for all 4 days. Because obviously, even on day 3, like the crowd was mint even after it just been pissing it down all day. I think it's kind of like it as a guy who basically his main sports that he likes. There is no such thing as the spirit of, or there's no ethics in the game. For example, my main sport that I like is football. So basically, I don't care if it's questionable ethics and stuff like that. Is this gonna help you win the game? Yeah, do it. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of where I stand with stuff like that. I don't ethics and everything like that. It's a results business at the end of the day, and it's entertainment.
So you're on the bus of if it's within the laws of the game, it's open slather.
Well, yeah, because ultimately, if it's within the laws of the game, then the laws are there for a reason, and you can't just say like, oh, for example, like a mancad, for example. Oh, it's not really within the spirit of cricket. Great. Well, don't start running early then, do you? Do you know what I mean? It's like.
Yeah, for me, it's one of the thing about it, and I've made a lot of jokes about it, but in all seriousness, what frustrates me as an Australian is the double standards and the hypocrisy of the whole situation, because people are calling spirit of cricket and saying the Australians are playing against the spirit of cricket when actually if you have a look at it, the Australian players are being abused by MCC members in the long room, when the MCC wrote the laws of the game. And that's one of the beautiful pieces of irony to this situation, right? It's the MCC wrote the laws of the game, and the MCC members are abusing, players in the long room, calling them cheats. And to me, that's against the spirit of cricket, right?
Yeah.
I think. Look, whilst I'm all for the Barmy Army and the Barmy Army are the banter kings, right? They're the best. With their crowd banter, but saying to Steve Smith, you cried on the telly, wearing Steve Smith's crying masks and things like that, calling them cheats non-stop, like, to me that's against the spirit of cricket. Like, and
I think the difference though. I think as when you're on the pitch, and the banter's going round, and they're wearing the Steve Smith masks. When they're on the
Mm.
pitch, I think go for it. If it's going to put any set of fans would put the opposition underneath a bit more pressure, a little bit more trying to get under their skin and stuff like that. As soon as they step over that boundary line, that's when I've got an issue, and I'm kind of glad because I forgot about the long room incident. And
Mm.
for anyone that listens to this, just to make this very, very clear, I'm not a massive fan of Lords in totality because it is very much a you pay to get in club that, and they sit there with, and I'm not talking about every single one of them.
You shoot corks at
Um,
players, for God's sake.
yeah, and my personal opinion on Lords is that it's there's a reason why there's an issue going on in cricket at the moment about um, levels of where you're at. Are people being not allowed to play the game, or being pushed out of the game because of loads of different issues, class,
Mhm.
racism, gender,
Yeah.
and unfortunately for Lords, that is the perception it gives every single time I watch a Lords Test match. I can't understand how England like playing there because for the first time that I've ever watched a Test match at Lords, yes, it was the incident that we're talking about that caused it. That was the first time I've ever seen a Lords crowd give a crap. They usually
Mm.
sit there drinking champagne, clapping every now and again. No wonder England like going to Headingley, obviously going to Old Trafford, which we're
Mm.
going to next. Like,
Yeah.
so even though that long room incident happens, that is a
Yeah.
very small percentage. If that had happened at Headingley, they'd have been called whatever for while they were on the
Yeah.
pitch, but none of that sort of long room incident would have happened if it
Mm.
was Dave that they're walking past, because Dave would have been like,
Yeah.
"Lads, what are you doing?" And that would have been it. Like
Yeah.
the
And
way
look,
that
so
was disgusting.
that last Ashes series in England, that was 2-2. You know, everyone was calling like Warner, Smith, and Bancroft cheats.
Yeah,
And look, at the end of the day, I don't have a problem with it when it's in the crowd, right? In the sense that
yeah,
like it's whatever.
Crowds are
It's
crowds.
sports crowds. Australian crowds do it. Like we've always got the broad is a wanker chant going at every test match. So like it's one of those. Is Stuart Broad a wanker? I don't think so. I think he's a guy that really gives a shit about his team, and he absolutely puts in every time for his team. I fucking hate him, but I think actually, if you sat down with him, he's probably an alright dude, right? So
Scrubs
it's
up
one of
there.
those things where it depends what shirt you wear. You know, when
yeah,
a crowd's booing my team, I'm gonna think they're grubs. But if I'm booing
yeah,
their team, it's somehow okay. You know,
yeah.
it's
But
one of those.
there's
But and
a way to do
I
it, though,
kind
isn't
I kind of think that double standard hypocrisy is how I view the whole Johnny Bairstow incident, because the English are up in arms about it, and I partially like if you want to call that dismissal a little bit how you're going, fair enough, but I don't understand the hypocrisy behind it when you've got guys in that English team, in
not a
my
good
opinion,
balance.
that have done far worse. You know, like Stuart Broad not walking every time he's nicked off and not being given out, to me is
Nonsense.
far worse than that incident. In my
Uh,
opinion.
yeah, and I love the fact that it keeps getting brought up, but it's just Stuart Broad, isn't it? It's just no, and I think we all kind of think the same way. I think we've got different views on how it should have been handled.
Mm.
Um, but I think at the end of the day, no one's calling it in question of the actual spirit of cricket. It's just what would we have done in those different situations is going to be different. But I definitely don't think. I think things that happened afterwards to the Australian team, and to people, was it Kawaja that they were saying stuff to? What?
Yep.
Yeah, you're giving Kawach a shit.
Like,
Mm.
come on. Like, one, he wasn't even involved. Two,
Yep.
what to me, everything I've heard about Usman Khawaja is one of the nicest blokes in cricket.
Great guy. Yep.
So why are you? What? Like I say, that riled me up
It,
probably more than the incident, because
it's
that
it.
it's showing, and unfortunately it does. It shows that the English are doing things that are wrong, and that is a percentage of people in this country that such a small percentage. Like, you've
Mm.
got what were the names of the people that? Come
Oh
on,
mate, I've no
like
idea, but they're all triple barreled.
like Bartholomew. I think Amy, my partner, she was saying something, and she said a posh name like, "Oh, is it one of these names?" And it actually was,
Yeah.
and like she was wetting herself because she was like, "As if I've just got one of the names because you've just said it was some toff." And that screams everything for me. It screams everything about Lords that
Yeah.
that small bit of crowd in the yellow and red that they think that they can buy the way into a crowd. It doesn't. That isn't what England cricket crowd is. The one that
Yeah.
goes away every single game, the Barmy Army, the ones that at Headingley
That's England
just
cricket. Yeah.
that's England
Absolutely.
cricket. Not what happened in that long room. That
Yeah.
that was just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. No, agreed. But I just um, I just think it was out. As Joe Root said, let's move on. I think
Yeah.
nothing more to say on it. And look, I hope it's not the thing that defines the series because fuck me, there's been some good cricket played
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
from both
I
sides.
think
You
it
know,
will.
like
Do you know what? I think it will define the cricket, but not in a bad way. I think it will cause it. I personally think that England will win,
Mhm.
and it's because of that incident that will have kicked them up the backside and gone, look at how instead of because I feel like at that point Australia showed you would do anything to win. Not in outside the laws of the game, but you were willing to do what was needed to win. And I think that's kind of showed England what they have to do.
yeah,
So I think it will be defining, but in the case that you're on about, as in you hope it isn't defining, I don't think it will be in a negative way. I just think it will actually make the series even better.
yeah. And I think I mean, I tend to disagree. I mean, I don't think England will win the series. Only because I just don't think you're consistent enough to win the next two Test matches, and I feel like Australia plays far more consistent cricket. But who knows what's going to happen next? But I think if I look at that incident, um, in terms of like a moral high ground, almost, I guess you could say, in England versus Australia. So when Australia comes out on top, like in that press conference that Pat Cummins did, like that was elite banter from Pat Cummins. Like they came out and said, "Are we gonna do any man cads or any underarm bowling?" And Pat Cummins' response was, "Well, it depends on how flat the wickets are." Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
elite banter, you know. Like
yeah.
so,
And
I
I
don't
like
know.
There's yeah. It's going to be a good series. I personally think it's going to make the series a little bit. I think it's going to kick them up the backside. But
Mm,
let's move on a little bit. Let's move on. Isaac,
yeah,
what have we got next? Because we
Well,
could be here all day.
we've been going for an hour and roughly about an hour and 15. So we can on the list we've either got the predictions for the rest of the series, which I'm kind of we've kind of just done really, haven't we?
mm,
And then we've got what would 3-0 have meant to the series. We've also got the Warner selection, the Warner selection conversation, or we've got the world famous soon to be this or that segment.
Oh, right. Okay. So let's have a quick run. Come on, predictions for Old Trafford and then the rest of the series. I'll let
Uh,
you go, Josh, because I think I know what you're going to say.
I I think Old Trafford's going to be another good bowling deck. I think if Australia can get their bowling lineup right, I think Australia win. I think Michael Neeson needs to play. I think he comes in for Scott Boland, and I also think that Josh Hazlewood comes in for Todd Murphy, and the batting lineup stays the same. So if you have a look at that. If you have a look at that team, I don't think you can drop Mitch Marsh. I think he played too well. I think you've got Warner, Kawaja, Marnus, Smith, Head, Marsh, Carey, Neeser, Stark, Cummins, Hazelwood. I think they have enough batting depth there, batting genuinely down to number 8, and then Cummins and Stark can both bat a bit as well. I think there's enough runs in the shed there, and that bowling attack's more than good enough to really cause
Okay.
England some trouble. England, they're probably going with a similar side. I'm guessing after a win. Look, you've got some class players there. I think Joe Root's unreal. Brooke, classy player. I think he's got a huge future ahead of him. But I do worry about your top three. If you've got a Batmo and Ali at three, I mean I think that's a bit of a liability. I don't know if you will do that. And then your openers, they're just too inconsistent. Like Duckett's had a couple of good innings. Crawley's had a couple of good innings, but they've also thrown their wicket away a number of times this series. And they've played in a kind of way where it's almost been like a chance is coming, like just about, like it could be next ball. Like they've never seemed in. It's been one of them. They've got their way to 40, 50. But it's been streaky, and I think that's kind of just the way they play. So I do worry about your top three. I think Root and Brooke are the key for you guys if they can score runs. You're in with a shout. Stokes is such a hit and miss one with the bat. When he's on, he's almost impossible to get out. So, and we seem to love dropping him as well. So, I think.
Come on then, Old Trafford. What do you think's going to happen?
Old Trafford, I think Australia wins, and I think they win by 100 runs or 4 to 5 wickets, depending on the toss. There we go.
And then Oval, you think you're going to win as well?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the series will end up 3-2.
Okay, Izaak, you next.
I think at Old Trafford, we are, Joe Root. He's the last game he did okay. I think next game, I think we're about to see one of the spectacular Joe Root innings, and I'm confident about it. I just feel like he's going to click into gear, and he's just going to merry 150 like it's nothing. Stark's going to bowl some absolute rippers, and he's just going to glide him away for boundaries. Quick singles. I think it's just going to be a good little performance from him. I'm just feeling it. I feel like I'm confident for Old Trafford, and I don't know why. I've just got a really good feeling about it. Like, it could go all Pete Tong, and it could go tits up by lunch, because that's just what we are. But I've got a really good feeling for it. I'm not gonna lie. I just feel like with us introducing Mark Wood into the side as well, it just really strengthens up our bowling attack. The only worry that I've kind of got, which is absolute sacrilege for me to say, is I'm worried a little bit about Jimmy Anderson, because he's absolutely done nothing this series so far, really. So they are going to play him at Old Trafford just because it's Jimmy Anderson. It's the James Anderson end, for Christ's sake. They're going to bring him in, but at what cost? I reckon, because if Jimmy Anderson plays a really good game that at Old Trafford, he can conceivably take that into the final game as well. But I don't know whether it feels almost like a risk, but I'm feeling confident for the game, to be honest with you. I reckon we'll win the series 3-2. To be honest with you, I think we are going to go 3 in a row. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling happy about it, and I feel like, do you know what? In fact, I'm feeling that confident. Our fielding's actually going to be quite good in the next game.
Okay. I'm
me now. I've heard it all.
Do you know what? Though? I'm not far away. I think with 9 days rest, I think if it had been sooner, if it had only been like 4 or 5 days again, I think we wouldn't have been able to play Mark Wood. Or if we had played Mark Wood, he wouldn't have been as effective as the 9-day turnaround that we've got. I'm with Izaak. I'm not sure about Jimmy Anderson. I think it'll really determine how he's bowling Monday and Tuesday in the nets. And I think they have to take the emotion out of it. Yes, there's a James Anderson end, but he hasn't bowled very well in this series so far. He knows he hasn't bowled very well, and Chris Wokes, who would be the person to me that would be a pick between for your swing bowler, played magnificently with bat and ball. So I personally think we're going to win at Old Trafford. I think we've got the bit between our teeth. And then at the Oval, I'm not sure. I'm hoping for a win at the Oval, and we take it 3-2. But I personally think you can only kind of get the feel how you played the test before. So when people make predictions for the whole series is a bit nutty. But I think we'll win at Old Trafford, and then it'll be it'll either go one of two ways. It'll either be an absolute amazing test at Oval, or you've lost 2 in a row and your confidence will go, and it'll be 3-2 England without a shadow of a doubt.
No questions asked.
So, as we're coming up to an hour and a half, I think that's probably long enough for us to. Should we finish with this or that,
Yeah.
and we can leave
All right.
Warner selection for the next one after he's failed again to Broad?
Look, yeah, he probably will. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
All right.
he might
This
score
or
30.
that.
Yeah.
This or that,
So
boys. So this
he's
segment,
playing against-
I'm just going to give you. I'm going to give you a couple of. I'm going to give you a couple of names of some players, but also some situations as well. And you've got to explain your reasons why you would pick one or the other, and you have to pick one or the other. You can't sit on the fence.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Blackpool Beach or Bondi?
Come on. Have you seen Blackpool recently? Yeah, Bondi all the way.
Bondi all the way.
You're lucky if you don't grow a third leg in the Blackpool Sea.
All right.
Nice, easy one, that.
Headingley 2019 or Amazing Adelaide 0607? Now, that might be a bit before your time, Izaak,
Let me
but
just quickly
two
do
incredible test match wins.
Oh,
So to give you some context, Izaak, so Headingley
so
2019 is that Ben Stokes
Yeah.
innings, but Amazing Adelaide was a test match that was always bound to be a draw. England made like 550 or 600 or something in the first. Australia made a similar amount in their first.
God,
Then
yeah.
Australia came out on day 5, took 9 wickets on day 5 and chased down the runs all on day 5. To win the test match in the last couple of overs of the game. So,
looking at the scorecard here, Paul Collingwood on 206, Kevin Peterson on 158.
Yeah.
Ian Bell 60. Alistair Cook had a measly 27. That's a crazy game.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was nutty to watch. It wasn't nutty to watch. It was absolutely fantastic cricket to watch, even as an English.
It was a boring 4 days. That just looked like an absolute flat dead wicket. And then day 5, enter the king. Shane Warne bowled every single over from one end for the entire entire day. Picked up 4 for something. Bowled unbelievably well. And then we took 9 wickets on the final day, and then chased down 170 odd, I think.
I'm going Headingley, and the reason why I'm going Headingley is because it wasn't just one day; it was the whole test.
Mm-hmm.
It was the situation as well where it ebbed and flowed throughout the whole test as well. It wasn't just one way, but the defining thing was how Ben Stokes and Jack Leach stood up and for kind of like Shane Warne did, but it was more to England's deficit, whereas the Headingley game was so topsy turvy. It was anyone could have won that game, and it was to utter brilliance of Ben Stokes that we won. Even though Shane Warne bowled very, very well on that last day, you didn't have a massive target to win the game. Where what was it, 381 was it? What did we?
It was a
Did we
much bigger
down?
chase. It's 350 odd, I think, maybe.
Yeah, so it was
And the last the 10th wicket partnership was like 50 something runs. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like Ben Stokes but my thing is that Jack Leach knew exactly what he was doing. And he's forever going to be a legend. And like polishing his glasses, everyone just loved it. Like I don't even think you Aussies could bemoan Jack Leach and his glasses. It was unreal that even though the Adelaide was very, very good. for a last dayer, and you won, and it was some real good last day cricket. Headingley was the whole test.
Yep.
I feel like.
Yeah, and look,
Go on, Josh.
probably probably a fair call. Probably a fair call.
I'm going Headingley just because I actually watched it, so I know the emotion. I know the
Nice.
emotions that I know the emotions that I felt in that game, but I suspect that the way that we feel about Headingley, you probably feel the same about Adelaide. And looking at the scorecard there, it's absolutely insane. So yeah, I wouldn't begrudge anyone for picking that.
I think it was just like Adelaide was the unwinnable test match.
Yeah.
I
It
think
should have
that's
been a draw.
probably why it sits so high on the list for me. But look, Headingley 2019, like I've said it a number of times, that's one of the best innings I've ever seen from an individual batsman in Test cricket. It's right up there in top 2 or 3 innings I've ever seen. And you're right, Steve. Like that game ebbed and flowed. Could have gone either way. Still, fuck Joel Wilson for not giving Ben Stokes out plum. Fucking plum. I'm still not over it. I'm still not over
Still
it.
raw.
This is why it's so good, because I still see Gary's face on the deck looking at him, because he knew that you'd wasted that review an
I
over
know.
or two before.
I
And
know.
the utter despair in his face. And
Yeah.
and if I remember rightly,
It was the ball after he dropped the run out too.
Oh, was
yeah, he
it?
dropped the
There was that run out chance where
yeah,
Leach nearly ran himself out
Oh.
and threw back to the non-bowlers and then Gary dropped it. And that would have
Yeah.
been test over. And then the very next ball, plum LBW not given.
Yeah. Do you know what I remember about that test massively was, obviously we were batting quite well, and I remember Amy had to nip to the retail shops near us, and I was like, right, okay, but let's go, and I stuck it on my phone, and in the time of me leaving the house and getting to the shops, we'd
Yep.
lost like the last 3 or 4 wickets. We lost like a cluster of them, and I was like, brilliant. And we still had something like 100 and I feel like it was about 120 something to go or something like that when we were down to the last couple of wickets.
Yep.
And I went in the shop and I was fuming. I was absolutely fuming. I was like, blood, we've thrown it away. We were in the position to win the game. And then I remember walking around the shops, and it just kept like I just kept looking at the screen, going, "Oh God, there's not." And then we get out the shops, and I bring it up on Sky Sports, and there was like 60 to go, and I was like, "What is going on?" And then he starts, and I go to it, Amy, let's get home now. and I remember standing in my front room, going, "What is going on?" And yeah, it's goose pimples now, lad. It's throwing goosebumps up on me, because it was just such a good game, and there was
It was.
drama throughout the whole test.
All right. Leading run scorer for England in Test cricket, Sir Alistair Cook.
So Alistair, get
Or
it right.
the leading run scorer in Australian Test cricket, Ricky Ponting. Who are you taking?
Oh man,
You got to pick one.
I'm taking Ponting.
So I'll hit you with some stats.
yeah. So let's throw some
Sir
numbers out
Alistair, Sir Alistair, 161 Test matches, 12,472 runs at an average of 45.35, 33 Test hundreds and 57 50s. As an opening batsman, that's pretty fucking impressive.
Yeah, as an opener, that is what. And throw Pontins at us.
Ricky Ponting, 168 Test matches, 13,378 Test runs, second most of all time. Average of 51.85, 41 Test hundreds, 62 50s. I'll also just add, he also has the most catches, other than a keeper, second most catches for a Test cricketer in Test history, and also affected the most runouts in Test cricket history.
I'm just throwing out. He didn't like being run out by subfielders, though, did he?
Gary
Right.
Pratt, yeah. Talk about the
Um,
spirit of the game, boys.
Listen, we know where I stand on
it's,
that.
it's within the laws, isn't it, to have a subfielder on? Right. This is tough because they are so close together for runs. Realistically, I know it's 12,000 and 13,000, but realistically, in the terms of scoring runs, they're so close. I will just say that Alistair Cook also bowled out. Who did he bowl out that time? It was horrendous bowling, and he bowled some out. So he's an all rounder, obviously, Alistair Cook.
He's taken one
One
Test wicket.
and it was a decent wicket as well. Who was it? Why do I feel like it was like Sangakkara or something like that?
Googling it. It is. Why does it not say? I don't want to put on a video.
It was against India.
It was. Yeah, I said Sangakkara, and it really wasn't. It's someone of decent batsman as well.
It was this mate. It was
Sharma.
Ishant Sharma.
Oh, was it? Oh, right. That's not the one I was thinking.
Yeah.
Legendary batsman.
Legendary
Gun.
Sharma.
Absolute gun player.
I will add Ricky Ponting has 5 Test match wickets.
Does he?
He does.
Bowling Tross. Right, I'm going Ponting. And it hurts me to say that because Alistair Cook is quite possibly one of the greatest openers ever to don a bat and helmet, never mind for England in all of Test cricket. It's just my only issue with Alistair Cook was always the speed he did it. Even though it obviously worked for him, I sometimes just got bored, and you can tell I was a bowler when I was playing cricket. I just got a little bit bored watching a batsman like Alistair Cook, even though it was nice to watch him get his hundreds, and he got a lot of them. Ponting was just a little bit more active, a bit more punchier. It was, and you know what? It's probably going to come down to this. Ricky Ponting was in that series, and I can't stress this enough for me as a cricket fan, it led me to want to play cricket. The series between Australia and England in '05 was just so good, and Ricky Ponting was obviously a massive part of that. So yeah, that's why I'm going to go for Ponting.
Yeah, I feel like
Nice.
I'm going to go Ricky Ponting as well. Just on the basis of this is going to sound really stupid why I'm going to pick him, but obviously I didn't like cricket until 2019. And I hadn't actually really heard of Alistair Cook, but I'd heard of Ricky Ponting, bizarrely. But yeah, also just looking at the numbers and the fact that Ricky Ponting was Australia's I think he's one of the highest win percentage captains of all time as well. Ricky Ponting, am I right in saying he's like third or fourth?
Yeah, he is.
Obviously that's due to the absolute golden side that Australia had from what seems like forever. But basically, I just think he was the captain of one of the greatest cricket sides of all time. He was basically leading the charge for them as well. It wasn't just sort of like he was just a part of the team. He basically was the guy, really. And also just the fact that his name's Ricky, I just think it's funny.
I love that.
Yep.
I love that.
Yep. Obviously, I'm Australian, so I'm very biased, and he is my favourite cricketer of all time. But Ricky Ponting is a batsman. I think he's up there in the Mount Rushmore of best batsmen of all time, along with other guys like Bradman, Tendulkar. I don't know who takes the 4th spot. Probably, I don't know.
Ollie
It's
Pope.
too hard to say. Not Ollie Pope. But also, I actually think he's the best fielder of all time as well. So as an all-round cricketer, absolute class. Ricky Ponting. All right, here's another contentious one.
Okay.
Joe Root or Steve Smith?
That is a good one. That is a good one.
Oh man.
Can I just ask before I answer this question? I want to do a
Mhm.
little bit of research about this. Obviously, you've spent time in England during an Ashes series. Well, yeah, you've spent time in England during an Ashes
Mhm.
series, and basically
Yep.
a lot of our media is basically just like, how on God's green earth do you get Steve Smith out? It's actually quite easy
Yep.
this series, to be fair, but in in obviously he's got like an aura of like
Yep.
how do you break this lock basically. What's the
Yeah.
Australian perception of like Joe Root? Do you guys have sort of like similar conversations, or is it like, you know, we know this guy's good, but we've got his number sort of thing? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's the overall perception?
In England, he's terrifying. In Australia, not even bothered. Like he's just another dude because Joe Root struggles with the extra pace and bounce of Australian wickets. I think in the Kookaburra ball, he hasn't scored 100 in Australia before.
Doesn't most batsmen though?
Pardon?
Doesn't most batsmen struggle with the pace and bounce in Australia?
Some prefer it. I mean, you look at guys like Ben Stokes and Johnny Bairstow typically play well in Australia because they like the ball coming onto the bat. Whereas Joe Root's happy to wait for the ball and play late, and that's why he plays all those late cuts and the reverse scoops that he pulls out as well, because you can wait and play the ball so late. But if you have a look at his average in Australia, he averages 35 for the bat in Australia. Now it's not disgusting, but it's not great. And he hasn't scored 100 in Australia before. If you look at Steve Smith, he's scored 1600s in Australia. He's scored 8 in England. He's scored 3 in India. So I'm going Smith just because I think they're similar in terms of their numbers. They're both average really good numbers. But Steve Smith does it everywhere. He does it in England. He does it in India. He does it in Australia. And just to give you some numbers, Steve Smith, 100 Test matches, 9,137 runs at an average of 58.94 with 32 Test hundreds. Joe Root, really good stats as well, 133 Test matches. So 33 Test matches more. He's got 11,236 runs at an average of 50.16 and 30 Test hundreds. So both pretty phenomenal cricketers.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
based on the raw numbers of it, and obviously the fact that it is an international game. Looking at Steve Smith's average in England compared to Joe Root's average in England, in fact, not in England, just in Australia. Sorry, on foreign soil.
Mm.
It is kind of chalk and cheese, isn't it? It's like Steve Smith is the overall batsman that they say it is. Joe Root's average in
Real,
England, from what I can see here, is 53.26. Steve Smith is 56. It's insane numbers from both, really, but I think Steve Smith is the
I was just
better
about to say,
all round.
I think that this this question would have been a better question if Steve Smith didn't lose a year. I personally think Steve Smith is without doubt, and he probably will, or he should, go on to be one of the greatest batsmen of all time. But I also think that about Joe Root. I also think that
Mm.
it's they've defined the eras that they've played in.
Yep,
Um,
big time.
yeah, and this is probably the toughest one and the only way I'm going to pick is off something that it should never have happened. So I'm going to pick Joe Root, um, just for the fact that obviously what I know about Sandpapergate, it was nothing to do with Smith, and he should have done a little bit. He shouldn't have took the fall that he should have, in my point of view, um, and I kind of blame him a little bit for not saying it because it affected his career. And I think if we'd had another year of Steve Smith, the numbers that he probably would be past Joe Root, if not on the same sort of level as Joe Root numbers wise.
In
As
terms
he
of overall runs scored.
overall runs scored, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I think they define both eras that they played in. I think they're unbelievable batsmen. It's only something that we could even dream of batting like, even for one day, never mind for the amount of time that they do it.
Yeah.
And for that reason alone, I wouldn't want to pick, but because you're telling me to pick, I'm going to go for Joe Root because he didn't cry on national TV.
Well, Steve, you can have him, mate. We'll keep Smudge. We'll keep him. We'll keep him. But also, he's played 33 test matches less than Joe Root, and he scored 2 more hundreds, mate. So, yeah, you can have Joe Root.
I like it.
Righto. Next one,
Right.
we've got James Anderson. I already know what your answer is going to be. Steve, the Appleton Express. We're going for James Anderson or Glenn McGrath.
Oh, mate, that is. Do you know why it sounds very tough? But at the end of the day, it's not, and it's literally down to the fact of Jimmy Anderson is the best wicket taker of a fast bowler in all time, and it's as simple as that. He's playing till he's 41 at the moment. He's the best swing bowler of all time. Glenn McGrath was so good. But it's Jimmy Anderson. If you're in swinging conditions, then there's no team out there that wouldn't pick Jimmy Anderson for the first name on the team sheet. Never mind batsman or anything like that. Jimmy Anderson's name's going on there straight away. Even though it feels tough, the simple fact is he's the best fast bowling wicket taker of all time. And yeah, it's a shame that I'm getting to see the end of his career.
Well, it's a good thing, surely. Feel sad for me. I didn't get to see the height.
Oh no, it's when you see someone that has done what Jimmy Anderson's done on such a solid basis, it hurt me.
21 years in 21 years in international cricket. It's pretty impressive.
It's unbelievable. And we've talked about how Anderson hasn't bowled very well this series, and it actually made me sad that he hasn't bowled the way he has, because I want him to go out bowling like he used to, bowling round corners and making batsmen not know which way it's coming or going, and then walk off going, I don't know what I've just seen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll hit you with some numbers, and then Izaak, you might be able to pick one. So James Anderson has played 181 matches, which is the second most in history, by the way. He's taken 688 wickets at an average of 26 and a strike rate of 56.3. Unreal stats. Glenn McGrath, 124 matches, took 563 wickets at an average of 21.64 and at a strike rate of 51.9. So average and strike rate in bowling terms, some of the lowest. He and Curtly Ambrose have the lowest average and strike rate combination, and Dale Steyn actually. All three of them are on par in terms of average and strike rate being the lowest. And yeah, obviously quite a few test matches less than James Anderson.
They are close, aren't
they? They're very
close.
close. And this is what people don't understand. People don't understand that just because he's played more test matches, yes, it gives him more options to take wickets, but especially as you're getting older, you would expect to see that strike rate and average go up. And if anything, in the last few years, it's come down. Like Jimmy Anderson has really learned how to use his body as he's got older. And like if he bowls anything like he has been doing in the last couple of years, and he's ready for Old Trafford, I honestly think that some of you batsmen are going to be in for it, because I'll even though you're not here, Josh, I'll let you know what it's been like the last few days, and it's the cloud has been over all the time, and people that won't know where we are, we're in Warrington, which is just about half an hour away from Manchester at best, and it's cloudy. Let's put it this way, I wouldn't mind bowling today.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
Well,
find. I'm just trying to find who basically had the because Glenn McGrath retired at 36. I'm just trying to find out how many wickets Jimmy Anderson had at 36 as well.
so
Do you know? I saw something
when James Anderson surpassed Glenn McGrath, he did take more Test matches and more balls to get to the amount of wickets, but
Right.
it wasn't by an awful amount. Like I think at that point you're splitting hairs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, on the basis of like longevity, then I would probably say Jimmy Anderson, but that's just by the fact that he's still played at the age of 41, so he's still
Yep.
got the go in there. Do you know what I mean? But obviously, Glenn
Yep.
McGrath's a fucking machine, mate.
Yeah. I'm putting both of them on my Mount Rushmore of fast bowlers.
Yeah.
I think they're both in the top 4 fast bowlers of all time. The other two guys I put in that conversation are Dale Steyn and Curtly Ambrose, by the way.
Oh, damn. Oh.
I think
No
all
Michael
4 of those
Holding?
guys are just absolute freaks. Unfortunately, not. He doesn't make my list, but I'll pick Glenn McGrath for a similar reason I picked Steve Smith. Jimmy Anderson's stats in England, he averages 24 with the ball in England, which is pretty outrageous. And he's got good bowling figures pretty much all over the world. But he really struggles. He really struggles in Australia and South Africa with the Kookaburra ball, whereas Glenn McGrath doesn't struggle in England. So in Australia, Glenn McGrath averages 22 with the ball. In England, he averages 19.34 with the Duke's ball. So he's actually better with the Duke's ball than the Kookaburra ball, which is bizarre for someone playing away from home. But and he's just got ridiculous averages all over the world in conditions where he just shouldn't have those numbers. But yeah, he's just taken an absurd amount of wickets all over the world. Whereas Jimmy tends to struggle a little bit in Australia and South Africa, so it's the only reason I think, for me, Glenn McGrath pips him just.
Yeah, makes sense.
You've not picked some easy ones, have you, Josh? Christ.
I haven't. Okay.
Maybe we need a few hard ones and a couple of easy ones next time.
I think this one will be easy for you boys because we're going across generations here. But Sir Ben Stokes or Sir Ian Botham?
I have no dog in this fight. I just know Ian Botham is, am I right in saying, other than Jimmy Anderson, the leading wicket taker of all time in England? Is that correct?
He's
No, it'd be
he
Broad,
was
wouldn't it? Broad would be second, and then it'd be Botham
I
three.
was just about to say no. I think Broad took top spot off.
Oh yeah, so it goes
Botham.
Anderson, Broad, then Botham.
Yeah. They both took him recently in the last few tests series, haven't they?
Saying that though, Botham did it in 102 matches.
I thought he only had like 400 wickets.
Nah. He's got 383.
Yeah, okay. So Broad and Anderson are well past that.
I was just about to say.
Yeah.
I'm going Botham. And I'm going Botham because of the era he played cricket in. It was a tougher sport than it is today.
Interesting.
On the body, not tougher to play. I mean, on the body, it was, and he played very, very. He stood up so many times for England, and not just at home, away as well. Ian Botham is a guy that if you could have 5 Ian Bothams in a team, you'd be taking that. It was his mentality as well. He wasn't one to shy away. He wasn't, and I'm not saying that Ben Stokes won't surpass that. He's well on his way to being better than Botham. But unfortunately for Izaak, he's new to cricket and new to English cricket as well. But Botham, once you got into cricket, when I was quite young, you learned very quickly who Ian Botham was. And he was a different level. He was that era's Stuart Broad, where he was Mr. Ashes as well. He turned up even if his body was telling him not to. He turned up, and and it was just beautiful to watch. So yeah, only just, but both of them.
Scored an average of 33.54 with the bat as well.
Yeah, which he was
Ridiculous
mainly a
figures.
bowler. So he was a bowling all rounder rather than a batting all rounder.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Looking
Beautiful man.
at his high scores versus Australia, his high score is 149. Versus India, it's 208. Versus New Zealand, it's 138, and versus Pakistan, it's 108. So he's got some mad scores in there over the years, hasn't he?
Yeah, he absolutely has. He kind of is the epitome of what got English fans excited about cricket again in the 80s. He was honestly, just watching videos. I never saw him live playing, but watching videos of him, he was different level.
Yeah, I'm with it. Who was the other option? Botham and
Stokes.
And
Yeah, do you know what? We'll have Captain Fantastic. We'll have Stokes. Why not?
Yeah, I think I'd have Stokes too. Just given how clutch he is. Like, I don't think there's another player in Test cricket at the moment, anyway, that's this fucking clutch. Like, it just seems like when the game's on the line, it's either Ben Stokes will win it for you or England's fucked.
Yeah, basically.
Or England's just not in it. Like, he's just, mate, honestly, he's just an unreal cricketer. Like, so many big moments in this series has been Ben Stokes.
Yeah. And it'll continue. And like I say, I don't think it'll be long until it takes that.
And in the last Ashes series as well, obviously 2019 Headingley, but also like World Cup finals, like he's just clutch.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I'm taking him, because their numbers are you can't even split them in by the numbers. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now you need to put your baggy greens on for this one.
All right, I've got it on.
Cameron Green or Mitchell Marsh?
Mitch Marsh. I've seen more of him, and I'm not saying that Green's not going to turn out to be a very good cricketer, but Green is very new to cricket, never mind Test cricket, and he has the potential to really, really destroy teams. He's got the height, he's got the power, I think his batting has looked good, except for in England so far. So I think Mitch Marsh has been around for a little bit longer, and he's just got a bit more experience, and that's why I'm going Marsh.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going Marsh.
So I'll give you some numbers. So batting averages, Cameron Green averages 34 with a bat with 100 that he scored in India, which is pretty impressive. And he's got 650s. So pretty handy stats for an all-rounder with the bat. Bowling stats, he's taken 28 wickets at an average of 36. Mitchell Marsh has got a batting average of 27 with 300s and 350s in 33 Test matches.
Okay.
And bowling stats, 44 wickets at 37.
Yeah.
So the numbers are really, unless I've forgot something, that Cameron Green really the numbers wise, isn't it? All right in saying.
Yeah. It's remember though that Green is very new to cricket. Like
I think Mitchell Marsh hasn't played a ton of Test cricket. Like he's played a lot of white ball cricket, and you look at the amount of games he's played. Cameron Green's played 23 Test matches. Mitchell Marsh has played 33. So Mitch Marsh had a very slow start to his career. One thing that I think probably why you're both thinking Mitch Marsh has got quite a good record and probably a lot better than what you sort of perceive there, and I notice you're both a little bit shocked. Is against England, his batting average is 50.54, and all three of his hundreds have been Ashes hundreds. So look, he's always performed well against England. He's got an excellent Ashes record, and with the ball as well. So he averages 23.4 with the ball against England, and he's only 5 for in Test match cricket was at the Oval in 2019.
we've seen the best of him, and that's probably why we're.
Yeah.
And like I say, I think Green will become a very, very, very good cricketer,
Yep.
or he's got the potential to be. But we've seen the best of Mitch Marsh, which is probably why I'm swaying that way.
Nice.
Yeah,
I'm picking Mitch Marsh because he's just a big fucking sexy human.
yeah.
That's why I'm picking him.
I was gonna say
That
I've
big
never
man.
seen like in that last game. I've never seen someone hit such a fucking boobing 100.
Yeah, I know. And just the way he strides out to the crease, it's just fucking alpha energy. He just gets out there, pumps the chest out. I love it.
Go. Come at me.
He loves it.
Love it.
All right, and the last one, and I really wish Richo was here for this, but Folks or Bairstow?
Oh, man, we're gonna have to throw that at him when he joins us next
Yeah,
time.
we're gonna have to throw that one at him as well. As an overall, or are you on about the easy answer, which is wicket keeping?
Oh, just who would you prefer in the side?
Right,
And they're obviously going to be picked as a wicket keeper. You got to have one of them. You can't have both.
Okay.
Oh.
Bairstow's, off memory, Bairstow's batting is a lot better than Folks. Am I right in saying? Have you got the numbers?
Yep.
Do you know what? But Bairstow's record is better. But remember that Folks hasn't been picked as much as he should have. Because of this, we need a batting wicket keeper.
Yeah, but
decorum goes round.
The thing is with Bairstow, this time last year we were having a conversation with Bairstow being the epitome of baseball, like being the epitome of everything that we like in our side, because his wicket keeping last year was good, and he was smacking balls left and right like it was nothing, like leading us to wins.
He was playing baseball with Folks in the side though. He was being picked for his batting only. So Folks
let me hit you with some numbers. So Johnny Bairstow's played 93 Test matches, an average of 36.51. He scored 12 Test match hundreds, which behind Joe Root and Ben Stokes is the most in the current English side. And Ben Folks's numbers. He's played 20 Test matches at an average of 32.2 with 2 Test match hundreds. And I mean, you would have to say that Folks is the better gloveman. So in terms of raw numbers, they're pretty close.
They're pretty close, but I'm going to throw this out there as well. So just from my knowledge of Ben Folks, when he's been picked for Test series against Sri Lanka, against India, against teams that spin, which is not always the best batting pitches. Okay, so I would take that into account a little bit as well. You have to pick one, and right this very second, in my point of view, if you're picking one and they've got to be the wicket keeper as well, it's got to be Folks.
Yeah.
I feel like he's not only the best wicket keeper that England have got, he's quite possibly the best wicket keeper out there in Test cricket, and he has been for such a long time. And you can ask, there's so many ex-professionals that are critics nowadays, and not just from England, but from all over the world that say that as well. His glove work is second to none. But then I also think he would fit into our style of play very well right now as well, because it's about that common sense approach, and if you've got 6 other batsmen that like to go heavy, Brooks doesn't do heavy. He bats at a pace which is still good pace, but he waits for that bad ball. He waits. He doesn't go searching a lot of the time. And to be honest, he was the mainstay in Ben Stokes's start of his tenure. He was the mainstay wicketkeeper. So obviously he plays a vital role. I think they've slightly picked wrong in the Ashes series so far. Do you still pick Bairstow? Of course you would. But for wicket keeping, and for the side that you're getting us to pick on this, who would be the wicket keeper? Then to me, you pick your wicket keeper based on the glove work, not just on your runs. So the numbers show that they're quite similar in runs. Obviously Bairstow's played a lot more, but glove work, it comes down to one thing, and that's Folks is better. So Folks would be my pick.
Yeah, I think it is a really difficult one because I do really like Johnny Bairstow just as a player. Obviously, this series he is not having the best of time, shall we say? With both, well, with Bat, he's been good. He's been good going.
He's been hit and miss. He's had a couple of good knocks.
Yeah, it's going to sound absolutely ludicrous what I'm about to say, but he's having a very Zach Crawley series. He's either scoring 70 or he's scoring 7. There's kind of no in between, is there?
Yep.
But with the whole wicket keeping situation, I do think that we are going to win or lose the Ashes based on our fielding in the next 2 games. I do have to agree that Folks is kind of the guy because the amount of times we should have like caught out the Aussie. Well, in the last game alone, I think we had four dropped catches just from Bairstow or saying or something silly like that, just something that he's palmed down by mistake or like it's hit him on the hand and it's gone out and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's dropped 7 and 1 missed stumping so far this series, which
there you
is
go.
a hell of a lot.
Obviously,
hell of a lot.
in to quote what Richard probably would say with us, you can swap out the wicket keeper and you can't guarantee that all those are suddenly wickets, which is true. But you've got to go based on who's a better wicket keeper. You'd assume, let's just be generous and say that at least 3 of them, become wickets. That vastly changes the outcome of all of the first 3 tests.
Yep.
Probably.
Yeah. No. Look, I agree, and I think it's one of those things, right? Like, it's just an English thing. Like, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but it seems like the selectors, they don't value consistency. Like what it seems to be the case anyway. Like, it just doesn't look like they value consistency as much as the Australian selectors. Like, I don't know. Like, he's such an inconsistent cricketer, Johnny Bairstow. But he has moments of brilliance, right? And it's almost like one of those things. It's like, I feel like the English selectors kind of go, "Oh, we'll just take the good with the bad." But I'd much rather see someone like Folks behind the stumps if I was an English supporter. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think they're very much, when they pick Bairstow for a wicket keeping role, they absolutely do go with the right. We're going to have to take the rough with this move. But I have been in this mindset for such a long time. I haven't been clawing for a wicket keeper, for being a wicket keeper for a long time. I've been a Ben Folks supporter.
He's a loyalist
for the last 5-6 years. I think he has been consistently the best gloveman in the world for such a long time. And me personally, I just don't understand if you've got it's kind of like going, right, Ben Stokes is quite possibly at the moment the best all rounder in cricket. Right, okay. But what about someone else? Well, no, it's as simple as that. He's the best all rounder cricketer in the world at the moment, so you pick him. Well, Ben Folks is quite possibly the best wicketkeeper in the world right now. Why are you not picking him? It baffled me for quite a few years. I think our wicket keeping problems have been well documented. The fact that we've swapped wicket keepers for the last 5 or 6 years this many times says it all. Whereas I think you've been quite consistent with. I think before Carey was
Painting.
Payne. Before Payne was who was it?
No idea.
Before Tim Payne,
Yeah,
Brad Haddon.
yeah, and then before Brad Haddon, it was So in the space of the last 10 years, you've had 4 wicket keepers, and we've probably had about 40.
But I think this is an Australian cricket thing, right? It's like you either like we tend to pick the 5 best batsmen in the country, who we think are the 5 genuine best batsmen in the country, and then we pick an all rounder at 6, and then it's the best gloveman. We don't really care if they're the best keeper batsman. We picked the best gloveman, and that's why Tim Payne came back in, because if you remember, Matthew Wade was in and around the side for a little bit. You know, a little bit. Like he played a few series after Brad Haddon retired and before Tim Payne came in. But he also got picked as a specialist batsman in a couple of series as well when Tim Payne did come in. But his keeping was good, but it wasn't. He wasn't the best gloveman in the country. Tim Payne clearly was. And he didn't score anywhere near the runs that Matthew Wade did, but it's one of those things. He also didn't drop simple catches.
That was probably one of the only times you went for a batting wicketkeeper, wasn't it, with Matthew Wade?
Yes. Yep.
And to me, it stands out really clearly in my mind. You can lose, with test matches on your wicketkeeper catching.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, it's an easy one for me, folks. Well, it's not an easy one, but it's if you're picking a wicket keeper, it's an easy one because, like I say, I've been quite. I know Richard hates me for it, and he was threatening to come around and do naughty things to me because because of what I was saying about Bairstow. But in my mind, if you're the wicket keeper in an Ashes series, you've got to be taking some of the catches he's dropped.
Yeah, and for me, I think it comes back to cricket in general between the two countries. I actually enjoy you guys saying you've picked up a couple of young cricketers recently, who are contributing in a really positive way, because I feel like you've carried a lot of cricketers being like, oh, we'll just take the good with the bad, and they've just been like subpar Test cricketers. So if like, just for example, like in batting, because I feel like you guys have had a very good bowling attack for a long time. But just in terms of the batting, Australia's batting lineup currently have all played a lot of Test cricket. Travis Head is the newest person in that batting lineup, and he's played 40 Test matches. Averaging 46 with the bat. That's pretty fucking handy. Oh yeah. You've got David Warner's played over 100 Test matches, averages 44 as an opener. And he's got comparable numbers to someone like Alistair Cook.
Averages against Baroda.
Oh well, yeah, that's a whole other story. Let's not talk about his performances in England. But he's garbage in England. But if you look at his numbers overall, they're elite numbers. Usman Khawaja averages 47 with the bat as an opener. That's elite. Marnus Labuschagne averages 53 with the bat. Steve Smith averages 58.9 with the bat. So all of our top five is averaging, 45.
40, isn't it?
If you have a look at like some of the guys in your Test team, like the experienced guys, Joe Root averages 50 with the bat, elite. If you look at the other experienced guys in the batting lineup, you're looking at guys like Ollie Pope, averages 34, right? But it's good to see you've picked up guys that are, they're actually contributing with the bat, and I hope for your sake they stay consistent. I hope they're shit in the next two games, but I hope they remain consistent, because you got guys like Harry Brook, like he averages over 60 so far. I know he's only played, a handful of Test matches, but and that average will come down, but he's had a really good start to his Test career. So for your sake, I hope he can grow as a cricketer and continue averaging that much. And Ben Duckett's another one. Ben Duckett's super inconsistent, I think, but he's churned out some good numbers. And particularly as an opener, I think all openers are typically pretty inconsistent. So look, he's churning out some good numbers. So I hope it continues. Zach Crawley's numbers aren't fantastic, but hey,
he had an absolutely terrible time in the England squad during the past 2 years, though, didn't he? I don't. Crawley was the one. Crawley was the one for us. I'm honest to God, I don't know how he survived that. The absolute revolving door that was Crawley, Hamid, and Burns. Crawley was absolutely shocking, but now I actually quite like him, so it's all right.
Yeah. I think it's Zach Crawley's lucky to be there, but I think we're taking a punt on a few youngsters. I think you brought up Ollie Pope there. I think he will be the mainstay in the England cricket team for a long time. I think he's been a little bit in and out a little bit, and it's not helped him. But I think it'll be good. I think we're at two different ends of the spectrum right now. You've got such a solid team. if you have a few newbies pushed into that, I think it might change the way that you play. Whereas we've come in with a new mindset, a new aura about us, and hopefully with a little bit of tweaking, will cause a lot of destruction for the next 3 or 4 years.
Agreed. I think you're a quality test match spinner away from possibly being, the best test team in the world. You guys and us, obviously. I think you're a world class spinner away.
Wait until that young man is
Rayan Ahmed.
Rayan Ahmed. He's
Yes.
very, very young. And
Super
I
exciting.
agree with you. Yeah, very exciting. I think the way he plays, I think the way he came into Test cricket last year and took it in his stride and played the way he did was real good. So I think you're right. But I think we're not far away from getting that balance correct as well. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Has anyone
Alright,
got
gents.
anything else to add?
No, we'll save something for next time, and because we obviously want to see Josh cry after losing at Old Trafford and the Oval. So
It's certain. Certain.
boys, it's been a lovely catch up, and hopefully a good start to a little podcast series that we can crack on with. But probably a lot more than what people was expecting for the first show, 2 hours and 15 minutes.
I'm going to go eat breakfast. Josh is going to go and tuck himself in bed.
I will, boys. I'm gonna go watch some amazing Adelaide highlights, and just enjoy that with a little bit of quiet time in bed.
I'm going to go and
think.
watch. I'm going to go and watch
It's
India versus
winter
the
over
West
there.
Indies.
He's got to get used to the cold for the next couple of months until it changes. Okay then, boys. Absolutely fantastic to catch up with you. And we'll speak soon and catch up again. Yeah.
Likewise, boys.
Absolutely, boys. And hey, enjoy the Old Trafford Test match. Good luck.
I will do.
But I do hope it ends in tears for you.
Thank you.
We'll speak in a week, lads.
Right,
okay
boys.
then, boys.
See you,
Catch you
boys.
soon.
Take care.
Bye bye.